Hey, welcome to Dan's Model Works. And it is part 7, I think it's part 7 of our Dodge Heavy Wrecker. And no, the cap is not glued on, but I've added this piece here, which basically helps to locate it exactly where it needs to be on the truck. And when all the final assembly is done and the interior has been glued into the cab itself, it will increase the gluing surface. Not only will I have where this is touching the frame, but we'll also have this glued to the backside here. So it's helping to locate the cab spatially, and it's also going to give us a little bit more gluing surface. And as well, you can see I've got the bumper glued in place. This is the bumper that comes with the kit. As you can see, it's made out of resin. Now, this originally had a bend more towards the front, and I'm not saying that the good drivers at Chrysler Transport were bashing into things, but I think it's more likely that the bumper would have been slightly back rather than swept forward. So anyway, I will eventually be getting the blue painted here on the sides. But for now, what I want to do is progress on the bed and the arms and things. We're probably only going to get the bed done in this episode, but at least we'll be moving forward. Now, the actual truck has a pair of air tanks right here, and this is going to be the start of our air tanks. You can see that basically I've got a cylinder and I've got some chunks of heavy plastic on the ends. They don't have to be this shape. I just used some scraps that were laying around my workbench. And I'm going to trim these down, and then I'm going to file them to get a round end on them. So in this shot, you can see I've cut away all the superfluous plastic. I'm going to file it and sand it until I basically end up with a round cylinder, and then I'm going to be rounding the ends. So there we can see both of the ends have been filed and rounded off to give the sort of shape that you want for an air tank like this. And I'm just in the process of finishing off the second one. Okay, there's my air tanks. They're both shaped. And I took a look at a video I saw online about the real truck. Ooh, I think I'm the one who shot it. Anyway, just to see what the bracket looked like that held these air tanks. And I know they're not exactly the same size. One's just a smidge shorter. We're only going to be able to see it from the outside and the top. So I'm not going to worry about the fact that one's like 2 millimeters shorter. So I've got the air reservoir assembly just glued onto this stick here. And it replicates as best I can what we found on the actual truck, which was 2 cylinders stacked above each other. And there was some... Each air reservoir had a drain on it. And there was basically an air line going from the end of the lower tank up to the side of the upper tank. I don't know how common that is or how normal a setup that is, but that was in fact what was on the photos. So I'm going to give this a coat of some semi-gloss black paint. I'll snap it off, and then I'll be putting it right about there. In this shot, we can see we've got the air tanks mounted onto the frame, and as well we have the start of our exhaust bracket going up here. And that beefy piece of styrene that I glued on earlier, it's going to help, because there's almost looks like a square tube, a square channel on the real truck coming up from about this point here. And I've been able to tie onto that and the frame at the same time. Now, it didn't look like there was any sort of angle iron or anything going up to the pipe itself. It was difficult to tell from that idiot who shot the film. But I ended up putting a piece of I-beam on here just to make it easier to attach our exhaust stack to. And just kind of I won't say administrative task, but a little structural task As you can see, I've added these two little bumps here to the back. And that means when I put the cab down, it locates it far better from side to side on the cab. And that makes it easier for me to plop the cab back on and off and have it be in a reliable position. Now, what could this twisted bit of plastic be? This is hopefully going to be our exhaust pipe going from the engine compartment down past the transmission, up through the frame, and hopefully to where we need it to go on that support I just put on the frame. We will see how close I came. Well, that's our exhaust stack in, and our very twisty bit of pipe going down. It actually went in fairly well, better than I thought it would. Of course, it still has to be well and truly rusted, even if I don't go nearly as far as weathering this as the real truck was at the museum. This pipe here at the museum was virtually completely perforated along its lower edge here. So I think painting it very, very heavy rust wouldn't be out of line. This was a chrome cover, so this can still stay fairly shiny. This here won't be quite as shiny. I think I'll have to recheck my pictures. But yeah, this bit here can be really shiny. This will be pretty darn rusty. Alright, as you can see, I've got the exhaust painted, and I've also done some of the brake work on the cab. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. It's 12:30 at night. I would normally be at work slugging frozen food right now, but we're in the big workshop here. As you can see, I'm wearing a knee brace, which isn't absolutely unusual. I often have a knee brace on either this leg or the other one. Look, I have two legs. What a weird thing to show people. At any rate, this knee was acting up, and I was going over to my mom's house to do something for her. I was going up her front doorstep, and my knee just went boof. That was it. One step, I was fine. The next step, I could barely walk on it. So, that's not abnormal. My knee oftentimes goes out, one or the other. But this time it was so painful, I was like, I'm not going to work tonight, so I'm using one of my personal days. I'm hoping that it feels well enough tomorrow that I can go to work and hobble around, because I don't have that many sick days. So, since I'm at home, let's see if we can get a little bit more work done on this truck. Now it's time to start working on the bed. Maybe going to bed, that would be a good idea, but that's probably not going to happen. At least not right away. So, from the back of the cab, we'd earlier established we wanted to go about 12.5 feet, and which takes us a little past the end of the frame. That's fine. So the bed itself is going to end up being 11.5 feet. Now, instead of hacking apart a Revell boat trailer, which I've done in the past, I've got this material here. It's made by Plastruct, and according to the description, this is HO scale / 1/100 scale diamond plate. And you can't really see it through the plastic here, but there's no way this is HO scale diamond plate. If anything, it's probably ideal for 1/25 scale. Let's see if we can focus here on the camera. Yep, you can see it. So this is probably even a smidge large for 1/25 scale diamond plate, but at least it's in the ballpark. I can't imagine using this for HO scale, which is actually 1/87 scale. There's no way. I mean, each of these little blobs of raised metal is about the size of somebody's foot. So, anyway, This material is available at most hobby shops. They can order it from Walthers and probably other suppliers as well. This actually looks like it's styrene, not ABS. I'll have to test it with some cement, but this is too floppy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it up with some of my uber heavy thick plastic that we got at the surplus store about a year ago. So I'm going to cut my part out of this, then I'm going to laminate the tread plate on top. This is basically the main piece of our bed. It doesn't have the tread plate on it yet, and I'm not sure if you can make it out in the light, but there's two lines that have just been scribed on here. They're 3.5 centimeters apart. I don't know what the imperial was, but that's how far apart my frame rails are. And you can probably see that I've got a slight angle cut here. That's to match what the real truck had. I'm going to be putting basically a heavy piece of styrene right here. Then I'm going to put some other pieces on the sides so that when it comes time to put this on and off, I can just put it on and off. And I'm not sort of having to keep measuring. Once I clip it in place, it'll be in the right spot, and I can measure everything off that. And this is now the completed basis for our bed. It's cut to the right shape. It has a stop at the back here so that I can just kind of shove it into place, and then it has these 4 pieces that will locate it properly on the frame. So when I go to put it in place, it sits in there nice and snugly. It's not rattling around or sliding or anything like that. And that'll help us later on when I want to actually glue it on permanently. Now I just tested a corner of the back side of this material, and despite the fact that it's made by Plastruct, which is usually ABS, this material here is in fact styrene, because Testor's cement normally doesn't affect ABS. Now, this is an important factor because although I do have some Plastruct cement here, this stuff dries and sets up so quickly that to do a big sheet like this and laminate it would be kind of difficult with that material. Whereas with the Testors, I can apply it several times and get everything all gooey, and then I can put it down, put some weight on it, and it'll set up. And I don't have to worry about, I mean, yes, you can use capillary action, but is that going to drop from here all the way across? I'm just test fitting the bed, and the sides are flush with the top here. So there's not going to be enough body between the wheel and the top. So I'm going to end up putting a piece in there to boost it up a bit. Through a very detailed means of measuring and trigonometry and geometry, I figured out just how big these 2 side pieces had to be. And of course I've marked them left and right. Because of course they're actually 0.5 millimeter off per side, so I wanted to make sure that they were handed so they were going to fit on the truck properly. Now, it has been suggested that the taillights on this wrecker are in fact the same taillights that Dodge used on its 1970s vans. And I'm inclined to agree based on what I saw. The only thing is the Dodge vans didn't switch over to this type of taillight until 1978, I believe, which makes the build date for the wrecker a little bit later unless they changed the taillights at some point. But at any rate, these taillights here are from MPC's Bad Company van, and they are in fact the same shape. And even better for our purposes is these are the type of moldings that have the texture of the lenses molded on the surface, which means that I should be able to make molds of these and then paint them silver and then transparent red, and we should get the effect of the original taillights. So I'm going to use these as patterns for making molds, and as well as that, so I know how big to make the openings on the back of the body. And that's our body taking shape. I'm not going to say this is exact, but it's looking pretty good to me. The main thing is I've got a bit more of a gap between my back wheels than the real truck did, but I think otherwise we're capturing the lines. These are the parts that are going to be going on the back, the body where the taillights go. Basically, I left enough space for 2 of those Dodge van taillights in each one of these pockets. So I did a little bit of work off camera. Hadn't realized I hadn't filmed for a couple of days. We've got the back put together. You can see we've got that very, very small angle like the real truck did. And on the sides here, we've got the toolbox doors on either side. Now there still has to be a latch glued on. That part's going to be made out of resin, and the mold isn't ready yet, so it's going to have to wait. But since it's going to be resin, I'm going to be super gluing it on as opposed to using plastic model cement. I put a very small bead on here. Nothing too serious, just basically a small square strip. So I think this is pretty much ready for some primer. And I'm not really going to be slathering the primer on the top surface here because I got a lot of things to glue on there. I'm mainly going to be just aiming at the sides. So I feel like I've accomplished something this particular episode. I've got the basic bed is done. It still needs a coat of the same gray that I have on the body. The underside, I'm just going to be using some Tamiya iron, which is kind of a nice, dirty, ugly color that I like putting on the underside of things. Most of what we need to do still is going to be the towing apparatus, the head frame, the A-frame coming out, and kind of the weird frame they had here, and then the bridle actually comes from above. I'm not sure if it's called the bridle. It's basically the tow bar that comes down and grabs the vehicle being towed. So, but yeah, we've got, like I said, we've got this done, ready to have its superstructure put on it. The cab mounting has been, as you can see here, it's been worked on, and I've done some of the bright work on the cab. Got the headlights painted in, and as you can see there, some of the handles done, and of course we've got the exhaust taken care of, and those side air tanks. So yeah, I think we have some good solid progress made here. So thanks for watching Dan's Model Works, and until next time, just keep on modeling.